The Leyte Sab-a Peatland Forest in the Philippines plays an important role in long-term climate change mitigation. It serves as a refuge and sanctuary to diverse species of wildlife and provides valuable ecosystem services that benefit the communities of people around it by acting as a massive carbon storehouse. The peatland forest plays an important role in climate regulation, biodiversity conservation, and communities. The Leyte Sab-a Peatland Forest Restoration Initiative, a 4-year project supported by Forest Foundation Philippines, aims to protect, restore, and sustainably manage about 2,000 hectares of the Leyte Sab-a Peatland Forest. Unfortunately, the Leyte Sab-a Basin peat swamp has been subjected to disturbance, such as large-scale land use conversion, particularly to agriculture. Thus, mapping the current extent of peat deposit in the peatland is important for land management and conservation. In the effort to map the peatland forest, peat soil sampling and mapping are vital. It is conducted along the edges of the peatland to detect the presence of peat soil to determine the extent of the peatland boundaries. It is a tedious process that entails hours of fieldwork and stamina. Prior to the fieldwork, all the necessary equipment, materials, and supplies are prepared. At the base camp, the teams are assembled and start planning, led by a study leader who assigns each team a sampling area. Some areas may be reached through motorized transport or on foot. Upon arrival to the designated sampling area, the auger is immediately assembled and the GPS and camera are checked. A visual or physical inspection is conducted to detect the presence of peat. If the presence of peat is likely, the auger is driven through the ground by 2 or 3 people until the desired depth is attained. The peat sample is extracted by lifting and rotating the auger at the same time. The team then moves to the next sampling area while taking samples at specific points. The sampling and documentation process is repeated several times along the edges of the peatland until no substantial peat is recovered. The team only documents and marks the areas with significant peat deposit of about 30 to 50 centimeters deep. All geographic coordinates gathered by the GPS device during the sampling process is imported and processed using GIS software. The coordinates are used to determine the extent of the peatland, and a map of the delineated peatland is produced. This geographic information may be used by concerned agencies and stakeholders as guides to future efforts in the Sab-a Peatland forest preservation and development. The sampling process detects the presence of peat soil by observing physical features like color and presence of partially decomposed or decomposed plant material. About 2 to 3 core samples or 20 to 30 individual samples are brought to the lab for physico-chemical analysis. For the peat soil lab analysis, 3 to 6 core samples are collected from 4 select ecotypes in the peatland. A 100 centimeter peat sample is extracted using a bipartite 60 millimeter diameter gouge auger. This sample is then cut at 10 centimeter intervals for easier handling and placed in resealable plastic bags. Samples are immediately transported to the laboratory for subsequent analysis. During lab analysis, peat soil samples are oven-dried for about 24 hours. The coarse debris, such as roots, are then manually removed from the soil samples and are homogenized, ground using mortar and pestle. Samples are finally analyzed for various physico-chemical properties. After thorough analysis, the physico-chemical properties of the peat soil were found altered, and the total peatland area is reduced due largely to land conversion and human encroachment. Changes in peat soil properties and area contractions, validated by mapping peatland areas, show clear indications of peatland degradation. Researchers have also determined the presence of 3 peat domes, which are vital peatland indicators. However, due to artificial cropland drainage, these peat domes appear to be flatter, and risks of flooding are higher, especially in areas located downstream. With the information generated from these scientific processes, we will be able to protect, restore, and sustainably manage the Sab-a peat swamp forest for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and biodiversity conservation.